here. Okay? This is just kind of a drawn out way of getting at why is it that when we want to make a change to our life, how come, if we know how much the food can affect the way we feel, and we know how much of an impact that can have in our lives, why is it not the first thing we look at when we want to make a change to our lives? We say, boy, I really want to make it, I want a different future. But we don't even consider making different food choices. That's a little bit odd, I think. So now is where we want to get into the presentation here. I'm supposed to have a whiteboard in here. It should be right on the side. Because drawing is fun. So we'll get this going, because I just want to have a couple little simple diagrams I want to show you guys about some of the stuff to illustrate what I'm talking about. So now, this might seem a little off and crazy here, but I want to talk quickly about the link between food and addiction. It's something I think is overlooked a lot of times. Now, there's been a lot of science that has actually proven that you don't only have to be doing drugs to be addicted to something. You can get addicted to foods, you can actually be addicted to emotions. So you can literally get addicted to feeling angry or to feeling depressed, to where you don't feel normal unless you feel that emotion. Okay? So I'm going to take a moment here and try just a quick diagram to show a kind of a rudimentary way that addiction works, to hopefully kind of give you a little bit of a different understanding. Sorry, this thing's kind of janky, so I'll do the best I can here. But essentially, addiction is going on a cellular level. So if we think of the cell, you have a cell in your body, and the cell has different points on the cell with receptors to take in the different chemicals produced to basically feel the different emotions or whatever it is that you might be addicted to. Okay? So we could have a receptor here, and we could say that that's anger. And then you could have a receptor here, and we could say this one is, I don't know, we'll say cigarettes or tobacco. That's a good example. Okay, and then over here, maybe Cheez-Its.
Never good.
Okay? And so each of those receptors is going to have a unique kind of fits together like a key into a lock, the way that the chemicals will fit into the cell. So the anger chemicals are going to be shaped to fit into that receptor. The tobacco chemicals are going to be shaped to fit into that receptor, and so on. Does that make sense so far? So what happens when we start to develop an addiction, that cell, say we overload it with, we'll say tobacco because it's a good example. So we're loaded in with tons of that into the cell. Okay, so now when this cell reproduces, it's going to be a new cell. This receptor for whatever else it is going to get smaller because it didn't get used. It's going to atrophy. This other receptor, it's also going to get smaller, but the tobacco receptor is going to grow and get bigger. So now it's going to take more of that to plug into that receptor to make the cell feel like it's getting what it needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be tobacco. It could literally be anything. And so this is kind of, I just feel like it's kind of helpful to understand how that's going on. If your cell is it's expecting to get a certain fix of a certain chemical. And so when it doesn't get that fix, then it starts to feel empty and like it's not getting what it needs, like it's going to die. And that's kind of the empty feeling that we get when we develop an addiction to something and then we don't get our fix of that particular thing. So there is actually a counterintuitive approach to stop addiction in its tracks. Now this is not really to do with my diagram here. This is kind of a separate thing. There's a guy named Alan Carr, he's dead now, but he came up with a method, or he wrote a book called The Easy Way to Stop Smoking. And people thought he was crazy because it's not easy to stop smoking. It's like the hardest thing in the world to do. But he figured out a simple change in the way of thinking that kind of flipped the whole idea on its head. He's got like clinics all over the world now, and it's like a kind of a big deal. This is the Alan Carr method. Okay, but the method is typically when we think of addiction, we try to focus on why it's bad. Cigarettes, they stink, cost me a lot of money, making my health terrible. But all those things are just more reasons to smoke, because they're stressing us out. We don't smoke because everything's great. That's when people need a cigarette, because they're stressed out. So if we pile on more stress thinking about the bad things, it's going to stress them out. They're going to want to smoke more. So the trick is to focus on the positives. And this is when things start to get weird. You start to think about the positives you're getting from smoking, and what do you know? There are none. And this tends to happen with a lot of negative addictions, is there's no positive side to it. You start to realize that the anxiety you're feeling, that you're trying to solve by smoking a cigarette, was caused by the cigarette you smoked before that one. And if you smoke another one, it's going to cause more anxiety to feel later, and you'll need another cigarette to deal with that one. So it's just going to be a vicious cycle. So the trick is to kind of focus on the good that you're getting out of it, and let that illusion kind of fall away. Okay? So here, this is where I kind of want to shift gears in the presentation, because that was all kind of background stuff that I feel like it helps give you guys a better understanding to bring you up to speed of the essence of the method of what I'm trying to show you here. One thing I meant to mention in the beginning is that I want to take this stuff and kind of give you a real in-depth look so you can understand it on a deeper level, but I don't want to leave you overwhelmed and confused when you go away from here. I want to give you a simple formula that you can use and take with you for the rest of your life. And this stuff will work for any sort of change you want to make in your life. It doesn't just have to be building a better relationship with food. It can be building a better relationship with your family, making any kind of changes you want. This is kind of the basic principles of where it all boils down to. Okay, so it starts with the ideal self. Now this might sound a little cliche. You hear the Tony Robbins and the gurus talk about the ideal self. But this is really, it's really important, because you need to get clear on where you want to go. If you don't know where you're trying to go, what goal you're trying to reach, it's going to be tough to get there. You're just going to be kind of cruising around aimless. So you want to get an idea of the person you're trying to become. And once you can get clear on the person you're trying to become, well, now you sort of have a blueprint. You can say, okay, here's the person I'm trying to become. Here's the person that I am. What is this person doing differently than this person? And you can start to notice the little changes. Okay, and that's the real trick. Let's see what this next slide is. Okay, we're getting into some good stuff here. So the real trick is to notice those little changes. And we don't want to notice after the fact. Because if you notice when it's over, after the chance to make the change is gone, it doesn't do you much good. We want to notice these things as they're happening or before they're happening. And this is when we want to get to the reticular activating system. Has anyone ever heard of the reticular activating system? Anybody know what that is? Okay, well, I could explain it to you, and that might really help you understand it, but I think it would be better to give you an example and show you. Is that okay? You guys want to do a quick exercise? It'll take about 3 minutes. Okay, so what we're going to do is the next slide, I have a picture of a bunch of random stuff. It's a bunch of my kids' toys that I threw on the floor and piled them up and took a picture of it. What I want you to do is when you see this picture on the screen, I want you to look for things that are red. Now, I don't want you to write anything down. I want you to try to do this all by memory. Okay, so you want to notice and remember as many things as you can that are the color red in this picture. We'll see if you guys can break my last friend's record. So let me get my timer going here. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. And take the 30 seconds and try to remember as many things that are the color red. Okay, so how do you feel like you did? You got 5? Anybody 5 or more? 3 or more?
3, yeah.
All right. Well, for the sake of time, we won't go around the room and ask everyone, but let's go ahead and go back and look at it again. Oh boy. There we go. So take another look here and see how you did. So how many about do you think you got? 5 or 6, maybe? Feeling good about that? Okay, so typically this would work different. All right, so now that was actually all kind of a trick to trick you guys, because I activated your reticular activating system to look for things that were the color red. Okay, but how many things do you remember from that picture that were the color blue? Is it the same amount? More or less? So you were focused on blue things. Because when I did this, let's look again.
The blue things are more individual, like the red to me, just spread out all over the place.
So that was kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Is that when your reticular activating system is focused on red things, you'll look, the blue things kind of won't even do that. It's kind of the same idea. Holy cow, I'm in shambles here. Kind of the same idea of if you're focused on things that are going to make you angry, you're going to see things that make you angry. If you're focused on things that are going to make you happy, if you're focused on things that you're grateful for, that's what you'll see. Because if you look at the picture, there's about the same amount of blue things and red things. And so that one, it's kind of a crude example. It would have worked better if my slides were working correctly. But that one, when I did that, it was a real eye-opener for me of like, wow, the stuff is all there right in front of me, but it depends on what you're focused on. So that reticular activating system, that's kind of like when you're thinking about buying a new car. Like, oh, I really want that red Jeep. And then you're driving around, everywhere you go, you notice those red Jeeps all over the place. Or that kind of stuff, you know, certain gadgets, or maybe a phone case or something. You got that particular phone case, and you notice everyone has that same one. Weird little things, and it's not that those things are just now appearing. They've been there the whole time. You're just only starting to notice them because your reticular activating system is geared towards focusing on those things. So the point of that is that if we can get our reticular activating system focused on that ideal self, and the self we see ourselves as, and we can start to bridge that gap, and then we're going to start to notice those changes as they happen. Instead of noticing after the fact, we're going to notice them in the moment because our systems are activated to pick up on those changes. Does that make sense? Okay. So, that only does us so much good. Because if we don't understand what's really driving our behavior, we're going to be able to make shifts in our behavior. So we want to understand our desires. This is how we're going to create a better relationship with food. So what is it that does drive our behavior? There's a lot of things that we could speculate on. We could complicate this and have a talk about this all day, about human behavior. It's a very complicated subject. But what it boils down to, this comes from Tony Robbins here, is it's a pleasure versus pain dynamic. Everything that human beings do, every choice we make, boils down to pleasure versus pain. So we're either moving away from a pain or we're moving toward a pleasure. And every choice we make can be boiled down to that basic essence. Right? And even if we're doing something that's not pleasurable in the moment, maybe working out sucks, but we know it's going to make us feel good later. So we're choosing future pleasure in exchange for pain in the moment. And that's part of the complicated essence of human behavior, of how we're able to make those decisions. But what it is that's determining what is pleasurable and what's painful for us is our values. What is it that you value? If someone really values adventure, going skydiving might seem like a really cool idea to them. But if someone really values comfort and relaxation, going skydiving probably doesn't sound like very much fun. And so your values are going to be what determines what is pleasurable and what's painful. But then, what is it that's driving our values? And the values are driven by our beliefs. Our beliefs kind of determine if we think something is valuable or not. If I believe that life is short and I need to squeeze every last drop of fun out of it that I can, that might cause me to value adventure. But if I believe that life is delicate, that might cause me to value comfort and relaxation. So depending on what our beliefs are, I shouldn't have thrown my whiteboard down because this would be a perfect time for another diagram, but Tony Robbins describes beliefs as a table. So imagine a tabletop with no legs. So if we try to create a new belief, the belief would be like the tabletop. And the references we have in our lives to stand that belief up, to put under that table to stand it up, are the things that happen that make us believe those certain things. So if you, let's say you believe that life is short and you need to squeeze every last drop of fun you can out of it. A reference that holds up that belief might be that you watched your grandfather die and he told you that he regretted not doing a bunch of stuff that he wanted to do. And that really stuck with you. So that was a big thing that made that belief become a thing in your life. Does that make sense to everybody? This one, now that I'm doing it without the diagram, I realize the diagram does really help on that one. But it's kind of a weird concept. This is one I struggled with a long time, was the beliefs thing, because I always wondered, if I don't believe it, how can I just decide that's what I believe? But you need references in your life. So when we see, okay, here's my ideal self, and here's the self that I am, I don't believe that I'm this person. So we need to create references and do things that we believe, so we know, okay, I'm this person now, and if I want to be this person, there's certain things I need to do. There's certain actions I need to take and behaviors I need to adopt. And when you start to do that, every time you adopt one of those behaviors or you do one of those tasks, it puts another table leg under that table to stand up that belief. Does that make sense? So that is kind of the basic principles and the core of what it is of when we want to change our behavior and make changes to our lives. This is really a blueprint here of what we need to do. But what does this all mean? If I send you out of here now, it's kind of like, boy, that was a lot to take in. You might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and there's no real plan or no formula for you to take it with you. So that's what you need. It's how to apply this in your life is you need a plan or a formula. So I'm going to give you a simple 3-step formula so that you can take this with you and you can use it on anything you want. Use it for the rest of your life, hopefully. This will be something that actually makes a big impact for you. So the 3 key factors. This is all you really need to remember to take with you from this. The 3 key factors. Number 1 is to maintain awareness. We got that particular activating system already geared towards what we want. So we're going to maintain that awareness, and we're going to notice as the things happen. I normally would do it this way, but I am noticing that that's not the person I want to be anymore. I want to go this way in my life, so I'm not going to make that decision right now. I'm going to do this slightly differently in the moment, on a moment-to-moment basis. And that's what's going to make a difference, is maintaining awareness and doing it on a moment-to-moment basis. But we need strategies and tactics. We don't want to say, oh, I want to be this person, and I'm this person, and I'm doing stuff wrong. Boy, that just really sucks. I wish I was someone else. We need a plan. When I start to do this thing I don't want to do, what am I going to do instead? What would my ideal self do? So we have a plan in place, and we know already, and we have an idea, okay, when I get done eating my meal and I start to feel like I'm craving a cigarette, I'm going to go through that strategy I have to remember that it's just the drug addiction my cells craving things that I don't want to put in them anymore. And that's going to help us to make that change in the moment. That's our strategies and our plans that we put in place to use when those things occur. Does that make sense? And then finally, this is one a lot of people miss, and I admit I'm guilty of it too. Because we think we can remember, we think, oh boy, how could I forget that? There's no way. 6 months go by, you don't remember it at all. Sometimes I'll put notes in my notebook, and it'll just be a scribble of like 3 or 4 words. And I think it makes perfect sense because I'm thinking about that particular topic when I write the note. And I read it a few months later and I have no idea what the heck I was talking about. Trying to figure out, decipher my own notes. But if we don't track our data and keep track of where we're going, then we're going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. So we want to know, okay, I tried this. It sort of worked. Let me try it a little different. Oh, I tried it a little different. It worked better. Okay, so I'll do that more. I tried this other thing. It didn't work. And when we can keep track of that and actually know where we're at, it can really start to expand and butterfly out and exponentially grow into bigger and better things. Is that all making sense so far? But the one thing is that we're not here for us, right? We're here for our kids. It's the whole point of all this, so we can do better for our kids. If we could load this up full of kids and have an impact on them, we would probably do that. But kids aren't going to sit and listen to a bunch of people talk about particular activating systems and all this. So how can we get our kids to form the healthy habits? I think it's pretty obvious. We've got to lead by example. We've got to do it ourselves. We can't expect our kids to do things that we aren't doing ourselves. We can't give them the old do as I say, not as I do. That's garbage. We need to stand up. We need to show them the right way to do it. But we can't stop there, because they don't know what's going on unless we communicate. We need to talk to them. We need to show them what's going on, show them why we're making these decisions and why we want these things in our lives. And then we need to communicate that to them and express it, and so they understand why we're doing it. And then share with them the 3 key factors. Show them if they can be aware of what's going on, and they can keep thinking about it, and they can have plans and strategies in place to deal with it when it comes up, and they can keep track of their data and know what works and what doesn't. That's going to be incredibly beneficial. That's going to help them with across the board. Wouldn't you agree? And that's what I got for you today. I don't know if I went over on time or how long that took, or I guess it might have been a little short, but we could open it up for a little Q&A if you guys want. If anyone has any questions. But I appreciate you guys coming and taking the time to be here, and I hope you got some value out of this. Anybody have any questions?
Are you secure where you're at now? After the COVID and before the
I
COVID?
am, yes.
Do you feel secure?
I am. I'm doing very well now. So, got my family is happy and healthy. They're doing great. And we're stable, so I can't complain.
That's
So
important.
things are growing and on the way up.
That's good.
Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.